Is it better to have eggs, maybe even some meat or whey protein or even casein protein at breakfast? And if so, should you be having 30, 40, 50 grams of it at breakfast? That's the question we're answering for today. Welcome back, everybody. We are here today with our Total Wellness Tuesday episode of the week. We're going to be talking about eating protein for breakfast or not, and how that affects overall hormone production, muscle gain or loss, autophagy, which is the breaking down and destruction of cancer cells that are growing in your body, and overall longevity. So what I hope to do is to always share with you the actual science, the actual data, not the moving, changing target, but the information, the education, so that you can decide what is best for you. Because as I've said before, there isn't one ideal diet, exercise plan, etc. There is a foundational based approach that works for everybody. But then after that, it must be bio-individualized for each person. That means made your own. And it's really based on a specific set of goals and parameters that you're trying to optimize for in your life. And I'm going to take you through that here today, because then you'll know if it's best to wake up and have eggs and an omelet or so at breakfast, and maybe a burger or steak or something like that at lunch, and more at dinner. Like, what are you optimizing for? That's what I'm going to be taking you through. But I'm also going to be sharing with you the direct science from both a, let's say, modern day scientific-based approach, but also an Ayurvedic-based philosophy as well. So I was, again, I'm really combing the research in depth. These are high-level topics we're talking about right now, right? So we're trying to, we know that if you're following this, you're probably not on the standard American diet, right? So you're one step beyond that, or maybe many steps, which is great. And now you're trying to figure out, what am I after? Like, what am I trying to optimize for? Because if you're willing to switch your breakfast, if you're willing to switch your lunch, if you're willing to switch your dinner, if you're willing to skip meals and do longer intermittent fasting, then at that point, now you're saying, I have control over what I am eating, and now I'm looking to optimize. That is what I'm talking about on the show, because I have all sorts of shows. I mean, I have the beginner level, just with what is intermittent fasting, what are proteins, like all of those things. This is just another level. This is saying that you are willing to do whatever you need to do in terms of eating, meaning like you have control over what you eat rather than the food has control over you, right? So that's what we're talking about. So now we get to have some fun. We get to say, should you have breakfast or not? We talked about that on just a couple weeks ago, right? And I'll link up all these other shows here today. So all the shows and research will be at stephencabral.com/2671. And then, of course, I always let you dive deeper if you want. So the question is this: should you be eating heavier proteins or even protein at all at breakfast? That's the question. Meaning, like, is it better to have an omelet, eggs, maybe even some meat, or whey protein or something or even casein protein at breakfast? And if so, should you be having 30, 40, 50 grams of it at breakfast? That's the question we're answering for today. Okay, I'm not talking about that at lunch or dinner. I'm talking about it first thing in the morning. And here's why. Think about it this way. If you're doing this, you're thinking about your food, you might have already been thinking about intermittent fasting. So you might already be going from 7 at night or 8 at night to 7 or 8 in the morning. So you got in 12 hours. Now, maybe you're a little bit more advanced and you're going from 6 at night to 8 o'clock in the morning or so. So now you're at 14 hours, right? So I'm not telling you how long on this show. I've got lots of shows in intermittent fasting. I'll link them up. They're basically all at stephencabral.com/IF. That takes you to all the intermittent fasting shows. Those are some of the most popular ones right now out there. And so what I would share is this. You're deciding what's the optimal breakfast. So whenever you break your fast. Now, why does that matter? Because you know that while you're fasting, what are you doing? Well, you're optimizing for autophagy. Just a quick refresher. Autophagy is the body cleaning house. That's how I like to describe it. I've always described it that way since like 2016 when I started the podcast. And what that means is that when you are not eating and the food has been digested, right? Because that takes hours as well. We'll talk about that on another show. Your body then has to find other fuel sources. And also, all of its energy, not all of its energy, but a good amount of energy is used for digestion and the process of digestion and the immune system as well. Well, when your body is not now looking at all the different foods you ate and how to break it down, it can actually scavenge the body. And it does, and it looks for weak mitochondria. It looks for bacteria. It looks for viruses. It looks for cancer cells. It looks for weak, dead cells. It looks for senolytic-based cells, like zombie cells, and it cleans all those up. It literally, it's a process of phagocytosis. It literally engulfs or breaks down those cells. And others, through a process of what's called apoptosis, means that those cells that are weak and dying, they actually are programmed to then die as the body needs to recycle those too. So it's a remarkable system that our body has built in for us. And that happens while we are fasting. And there's one more process that I want to share with you that also, there's a lot of processes, but there's another process that happens called AMPK. And AMPK just stands for AMP activated protein kinase. All that means is that it is a cellular-based energy sensor. So when there's not a lot of fuel coming in, the body says, okay, we are going to now down-regulate some of these processes, such as increasing ATP, et cetera, and actually begin more of a catabolic process to break down whatever it is that we need. Amino acids, cellular particles, it's going to break down, we can start with glycogen if you start to drop blood sugar levels too low. It's all part of the catabolic, which means breakdown, AMPK process. Why does that matter? Well, because you would think by what I said initially of the breakdown of cancer cells, the weak cells, the bacteria, the viruses, et cetera, the boosting the immune system, is that you would just want to do that. You just want to fast all the time, right? But the problem is, if you fast all the time, you become too catabolic. The body becomes too weak. The immune system becomes too weak. The muscles become too weak. Everything gets too weak. It breaks down too much. You can start to become, you fall into what's called sarcopenia, muscle loss, or you get into osteoporosis, bone loss, or you start to get into amenorrhea, which is the loss of a female's menstrual cycle. Men can become low in testosterone. Like all these things can happen if there's too much catabolism, too much breakdown. So now you're thinking, well, I don't want that. And right, so like we don't want to over fast, especially as you get older, right? Fasting is important. Over fasting, not good. That's why you can get away with it when you're teenagers in your 20s and early 30s, because going back again, I hope you tuned into the previous podcast, something called the disposable soma theory of aging, also called the triage aging theory. And I'll link that up. I believe that was episode like 2631 or so. So I'm going to link that up here today too, because these are important topics that you talk about. I mean, this is what we dive deep into in high performance health, in our course, in our certification for coaches. So, because this is really important. There is no one answer. That's why I had to give you this little of a background right now, because what happens is if we don't want to become too catabolic, we need its reverse, which is anabolic, anabolism. Anabolism is tissue proliferation, tissue repair, growth, rejuvenation, rebuilding. And that, again, it's dictated by a lot of things, growth hormone, et cetera, but one of those is called mTOR. And mTOR, I'm just going to call it TOR or mTOR, stands for mammalian target of rapamycin. Now, this is switched on when the body has more protein, more amino acids, more hormones, and that enables the body then to grow, cells to proliferate, for the body to start a large part of that repair-based process. Now, repair happens in autophagy and the other parts as well, so they need to be balanced, but there's no doubt about it, if you're not getting in enough food and you're fasting too long, you very easily can lose muscle mass. I did a whole series of podcasts on that. A lot of people, when they're losing weight and they're intermittent fasting, much of that is from muscle. I talked about how you mitigate that through strength training. I actually even gave you the scientifically studied strength training-based workouts as well. Those are all in the intermittent fasting podcast, so feel free to check all those out. Okay, so here's what I want you to know about that. mTOR, right, mammalian target of rapamycin, helps with the anabolism, the growth of the body. The problem is it shuts down AMPK, autophagy, and apoptosis to a degree. And it instead favors cellular growth and proliferation. So now, because of that, if you push too far into mTOR, mTOR is associated with diseases in life like cardiovascular issues, with cancer, and others as well. So we've got cancer, we've got cardiovascular issues, we've got potentially type 2 diabetes, we've got potentially high blood pressure. So some serious issues, stroke, heart attacks, etc. However, right, on the other side, we've got the osteoporosis, the muscle wasting, the weakened immunity, all of those things as well. So what I'm sharing with you is this. A lot of people are trying to push right now towards one direction or the other, over fasting or massively increasing your protein, right, and hormones. On both extremes, guess what? Just like everything in life, extremes are bad, right? I mean, that's literally all I can say about that. You will never win in the long term with the extremes. So you might say to yourself, well, that's not true. I've been doing a XYZ diet right now, which only includes this one specific macro group, and I feel fantastic. Here's the thing. When you have been pushed too far in the other direction, what do you need? You need the pendulum to swing to the other direction. When I was catabolic, I had Addison's disease and all sorts of issues. What did I need more of? Less catabolism. I needed more anabolism. But then, what happens when I was more anabolic? I really pushed in that direction. Well, I needed more of the catabolic. So what works really well? Well, a carnivore diet works really well to turn on mTOR, and a vegan diet works really well to turn on AMPK. And so that's why people in both camps can do so well for a certain period of time. And then what happens? Well, they need balance. But that's why people just swing wildly from one direction to the other and they get benefits each time, rather than finding not moderation, but finding the balance. So now it brings us back to all of that. I know there's a lot of lead up, but I wanted to share that with you, and this is important. Breakfast. I'm not going to go over whether you should skip breakfast or not. I've done many podcasts on that. I would say the data says it's not a good idea. Okay, I just want to share that with you. But that doesn't mean breakfast needs to be 6 a.m., right? Could be 8 a.m., could be 9 a.m. It depends when you start your day. It depends when you start your day and how much stress there is. And then remember, you can stop eating earlier in the night, which seems to confer far more benefit. But again, we'll save that discussion. We've already talked about that, but we'll save it even for another day. We'll do a part 12 another day. So what I want to share with you now, though, is should you eat the eggs, the steak and eggs for breakfast, right? Should you do the 50-gram whey protein shake like I used to do back in the day? I used to do all of those things, right, for the more mTOR-based phase. What was I trying to do? Well, I knew what I wanted to do, and I wanted to put on more muscle. My natural weight for me, just working out, a few days a week and doing my strength training, doing what I want, eating normally, it's in the mid 160s. That's where my weight typically sits. Now, I've been in the high 140s. Can't really go too much lower than that. That's really light for me. And I've been all the way up at 200 pounds. So it's like I've been kind of the extremes with about 50-pound swing. And the thing is this, you have to just ask yourself, what are you trying to optimize for? And I want to share that with you right now. When I was trying to optimize for muscle, natural bodybuilding, and I'm 5'8", so when I wanted to get to 200 pounds on my frame, that wasn't going to be easy. But you can do anything, you really can, with your body if you want to push to the extremes. So what did I do? I ate 6 times per day. I got in way more protein than you need to get in, but again, I was optimizing for anabolism. And you know what? It worked. I got in 250 to 300 grams of protein a day, sometimes more. And all I did really easily was I got about 50 grams of protein 6 times a day. And that's how I did it. Sometimes I would only get in 5 meals, so that was 250, but I would try to always get in 6. And that is how I was optimizing. So the other thing is this, you want to put on a lot of muscle, you need 2 main things. Saturated fat boosts hormones. It does. Again, I run hundreds of thousands of laps. And so saturated fat, lots of it, precursor to what? DHEA, testosterone, progesterone, estrogen, you name it. That's a precursor. Okay. And amino acids. for tissue repair. And if you just eat tons of protein, it can also be used as a carbohydrate because amino acids can be broken down and eventually, again, it's not the best way to optimize for weight gain. You eat a lot of carbs too, but anyway, you need those. Okay, so we've got anabolism, but we know, again, that's optimizing for hormones and for body transformation, because you don't need to eat that much protein, of course. You can check out my protein episode as to how much protein you should eat based on your goals. That was episode 2631. But again, that was episode 2638. If you go to stevencabral.com/2671, I'll link everything up there. So just 2671 is today's show, because I need to give you the other part of it. If you want to become more catabolic, I already kind of gave it away. It's more of a plant-based diet, or all plant-based diet. Fruits and vegetables, right? You've heard a lot about green juicing, those types of things. Very catabolic diet. So if someone's trying to lose weight, it does work. It really does. But what you're not optimizing for, not optimizing to keep muscle on, not optimizing for hormones. You can still do well, but you have to look at that. But what happens is this. When you're starting your breakfast with more heavy proteins like I used to do, it turns off autophagy. It turns off AMPK. You're going to always stay in that state of growth, right? That's important because you don't want to start dipping into muscle mass. And you always want to be repairing, because if you're doing your strength training workouts, etc. So then you're not getting the autophagy as much. You're not getting the other things. But then if you're more catabolic, your fruits and veggies, again, nothing wrong with those, then you're not in the growth-based phase as much. So here's what we need to look at. What are you optimizing for? And that will answer your breakfast. If you want to keep the autophagy going, if you want to keep the AMP going, if you're looking to lose more weight or do more cellular cleanup, you're going to want to opt for a lighter breakfast, no heavier meat-based foods, eggs, steak, right, red meat, chicken, you know what I'm saying, all the flesh-based foods, as well as dairy. Those are anabolic. They have saturated fat, they have protein. Okay, so you'll opt more for your berries and your veggies, your green juices, those types of things. And vice versa, of course. Those are also what's been proven to live a longer, healthier life, because it goes along with the disposable soma theory on aging. Now, you don't have time to go through all that today. But as you know, and I've been sharing inside of High Performance Health as well, that at 100 years old, all the 100-plus-year-olds that I've seen with, like we're talking about, let's say less than 10%, I'm being generous, less than 10%, look like they are still able to be very physically active. That's the truth. So as I'm trying to help people optimize for 100-plus years old, I don't think we can go that catabolic, right? So what I'm sharing is a middle-of-the-road approach. And so what I'm sharing with people is plant-based proteins for 2 out of your 3 base meals, and you can still do some meat or ideally fish. And I'm not saying anything against meat. I eat meat. So before everyone says meat's the most nutritious food in the world and all of these things, I get it. I've studied that as well. So I get it. I understand. But you just need to know what you're optimizing for. So what I'm trying to optimize for right now is I have more than 50 years to go before I turn 100, but you have to start thinking about these things now, right? So what I'm trying to do is optimize to keep muscle mass in the body, but not overdo it. And so I choose a plant-based protein for breakfast. I just do a smoothie with the fruit in there, with a little bit of fruit and vegetable blend powder. And then at lunch, again, you can choose what you want to do. Maybe it's fish, maybe it's some hemp hearts, maybe it's some chickpeas, black beans, lentils, etc. And then maybe at night you do your meat, fish, chicken, poultry, eggs, etc. Or you switch your lunch with your dinner. I don't want to go through the lunch and dinner today, but I do want to let you know is if you have heavier proteins, dairy or meat-based, right away for breakfast, you are stopping a lot of that autophagy and AMPK process. But you are getting the benefits of muscle-based growth. Now, if you do more plant-based or only plant-based, it's being shown that you can probably still keep some autophagy and AMPK going because they're not anabolic foods. And if you do more middle of the road, you're probably, I would say, getting the most benefit. If you're worried about becoming too catabolic losing muscle mass, strength, endurance, etc. So something to think about. Again, I'm not telling you what to do. I want you to think about these things though. I want you to keep an open mind because there is not one right answer. That's why people tell you, oh, this is what I do and it works great. Look at me. I'm on, hormone replacement therapy. And yeah, I get it. I understand it. Is that what you're optimizing for? Because if you are, then great, keep on doing it. But I can tell you right now, that's not going to get you to 100 because nobody gets to 100 doing that. There's nobody who gets to 100 doing that, right? There are no long-lived people that are on super physiological hormone replacement therapy with eating 1 plus X, 1 plus times their body weight in protein per day. It doesn't happen. Like, there are not those people. And if people have examples of that, please, send them in because I want to learn from that as well. But when you look at cross-population studies of people in the longest lived areas of the world, I've given you all of this before, but you are not looking at an mTOR heavy diet plan. And I'm going to keep it at that. I will let you decide. So again, my job is just to share with you what I see, what the science backs up, but also what I see in clinical practice, like how we get the numbers to move. And then it is up for you to decide where you're at. If someone told me this in my 20s, I would not have listened, nor would I have cared. And I have a colleague who is around 40 years old, right around 40 years old, and they are on testosterone replacement therapy. They eat 200 plus grams of protein per day. They are absolutely jacked. No, there's no doubt about it, and shredded. And they eat no vegetables. They don't eat anything like that. And when people asked, they said to this individual, I don't care. That's what they said. I don't care. I'm not optimizing for that. And I said, you know what? Then good for you. That is not what you're looking to do. That is not what they're optimizing for. I just worry that opinion may change in their later 50s, right? When the damage has really been done. I don't know, but maybe it's not for everyone. That's the thing. I am not telling you how to live your life. I never want to come off as that. I simply want to share with you what the best data tells us right now. And if we can start to get people to live past 100 that look like Instagram, fitness models, then fantastic that we can start to recommend that as well. So hopefully this was helpful. Again, you can be in great shape. You can live a long life. I don't think that you can go with the extremes, and that it was basically my point for today's show. So thank you so much. Previous podcasts, all the intermittent fasting, all those good stuff is at stephencabral.com/2671. Take care, everybody. Have an amazing day. Feel free to share the show with anyone you believe it could serve. Thanks so much for tuning into today's show. Before you go, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I want to make sure that you're getting our daily content, not missing out on anything functional medicine, wellness, weight gain, weight loss, anti-aging, living longer, stronger, and all of the most cutting-edge research. And if there's any topics you want to hear, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Take care.